In the news this week, Premier Mark McGowan urged to come up with new ideas to combat the rising cost of living, with an exclusive poll showing a bad start to 2023 for WA households.
Also tonight, giving WA kids a fair go. Protests to raise awareness on mental health support inequality among schools. Stuff the UK and come to WA. Response from community leaders over the government's overseas talent recruitment campaign, and later Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loom and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening. It's only February and many West Australian households are already having a bad start to 2023. Hoping Premier and Treasurer Mark McGowan will come up with new ideas regarding cost of living relief. An exclusive WAMN news poll asked our viewers about their household financial situation at the start of 2023. With a staggering 95% saying they are worse off, and only 5% says they are better off. The Opposition Shadow Treasurer Steve Thomas joins us. Steve, thank you for your time. Almost 100% says they are worse off financially, and it's only February. What does it mean?
So it means that the people of Western Australia are struggling, that there is a cost of living crisis, and people are having to look at their discretionary spend. There's a lot of families in trouble at the moment, and people are not better off than they were this time last month, this time last year. Almost everybody is worse off.
Do you believe Mark McGowan has dropped the ball on the cost of living?
I think Mark McGowan has forgotten about cost of living issues. I mean, Mark McGowan is on the old pension plan, so they don't impact directly on him. But the people of Western Australia, they have a huge impact. I mean, there are people who might lose their homes as a result of the cost of living squeeze that's on at the moment. Certainly it's putting pressure on everybody.
Now, only a handful of people believe they are financially better off this year. Why is that?
Well, I'm surprised that anybody is better off, to be honest. I mean, the interest rates impact on anybody who has a mortgage, and that's a huge part of the population. There's a small group of people who have money in the bank, and they're getting slightly more than they were. But everybody is hit by the general cost of living. Food is more expensive. Government fees and charges are more expensive. So almost everybody has higher fees and charges to deal with. There would be a very small group who are getting more money than that. I'm surprised that anybody in your survey is actually better off than they were.
The state budget is only a few months away. What's your call to Premier Mark McGowan?
Mark McGowan is still hiding the amount of money he has in his budget. He's saying he's going to have a $2 billion surplus, but he's taken a couple of $1 billion out and stashed it away. He is still Scrooge McDuck. There is still $4 billion in the surplus, and it might even be slightly higher than that. That runs off the iron ore price, which is still over $120 a tonne today. No government, no leader has a better capacity in this country, perhaps in the world, than Mark McGowan to assist people with cost of living issues, and Mark McGowan is simply refusing to do it. He's done a few things in the past. The next budget has to add an additional measure for cost of living.
Steve Thomas, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ivan. Pleasure.
A protest will be held at Parliament House this coming Thursday, led by parents, children and former school teachers in WA. The protesters are demanding a better level of mental health support for public school kids, similar to the level of care available at several independent schools. The protest organiser Mark Cummins joins us this week to reveal what we can expect on Thursday. Mark, thanks for joining us. Are you able to share your situation with us and why some parents and teachers are upset now?
Listen, it's hard to believe that in this day and age we have to fight for the safety of our kids when they're at school. But basically that's the situation now. The McGowan government is refusing to mandate life-saving mental health guidelines for all students in all schools. Those guidelines are called School Planning and Response for students with suicidal behaviour and non-suicidal self-injury. Those specific guidelines were formulated in 2018 by the Department of Education, by the Association of Independent Schools WA, or ASWA, and by Catholic Education WA. Those guidelines have been endorsed by all three education providers and have been updated yearly. Yet we're faced with a situation now where the McGowan government will not mandate those guidelines, but is providing funding in the form of grants to Catholic Education WA and to ASWA, so their schools can be covered by these grants. so their schools can be covered by these guidelines. So at the moment, every Catholic school in WA mandates these guidelines, so their students who are suffering from a mental health crisis are supported, are looked after and are cared for. It's not the case in public schools, and for me that's absolute discrimination and it needs to be changed straight away.
Are there any guidelines or mandates in WA's public schools on mental health support?
Listen, absolutely there would be, but what we want is equality and fairness for all kids. Have those guidelines available, make sure schools are well briefed and well resourced across all three sectors, so that if a child does disclose suicidal ideation or self-harm, then they are cared for. That is what we're going to fight for. That is what we're asking the McGowan government to do, is to mandate these guidelines for every kid in every school in WA. And that's what we'll be fighting for on Thursday, the 23rd of February at 9 o'clock at Parliament House. We lose too many children, too many school-age kids, too many people to suicide. And all we're asking is a fair go. And for me, that's Australian, a fair go for everyone.
And you can read more about this story now on the WMN Extra News Club. Details are in the description. Mark Cummins, thanks for your time.
No problems at all. Thank you.
A mission led by Police and Defence Minister Paul Papalia seeks to target UK and Irish workers to move to Western Australia. The mission will sell WA's high wages, lower cost of living, surf and sunshine lifestyle to workers overseas. Commencing on Saturday, February 25th in London, the operation seeks to build a pipeline of workers that will aid the infill of 30,000 job vacancies across Western Australia, with the main focus on police officers, teachers, nurses, midwives, doctors, dentists, mechanics, builders, plumbers, and those with experience in mining and hospitality will also be targeted in the state government's pitch targeted at UK and Irish workers. Salaries within WA are often more than 50% higher than the average English salary for the same occupation. The state government is selling WA's median house prices figures, the average size of a new Australian home, and how much sunlight exposures we receive to boast the overseas audiences.
In the ongoing fight against climate change, the WA government has turned to investment in electric vehicle infrastructure, with the state's energy minister announcing the Charge Up Workplace Grant program. The bid to boost the state's EV infrastructure is a component of the state government's $60 million budget promise to decrease carbon emissions. 2 rounds of funding will be available from the $15 million grant program. The first round will have a limit of $3.75 million up for grabs and is aimed at small and medium businesses, local government authorities and not-for-profit organisations.
This is exciting news for all West Australians as we head down our decarbonisation pathway towards 42% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2050.
An 18-year-old man has been charged by Joondalup detectives following an investigation into an aggravated armed robbery that occurred on Wednesday at a park on Hemsdale Loop in Butler. At around 8:30 p.m, it will be alleged the victim, the 16-year-old girl, met the accused at Gary Micnic Park following an online arrangement to purchase a designer bag. Once at the park, it's further alleged the accused threatened the victim before striking her on the head with a hammer. The accused fled the scene with the victim's belongings, which were later recovered from his address. The Butler man has been charged with one count of aggravated armed robbery and appeared at the Joondalup Magistrates Court this week.
Western Australia's Arab community prepares for a major festival on the 25th of February, this coming Saturday at Burswood Park, behind Optus Stadium from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. Hundreds and thousands of people are expected to attend the annual festivities, with cultural performances, food stalls, gaming, camel rides and fireworks at 7:45 p.m. The association's spokeswoman Amal Youssef expressed excitement over the festival.
Next Saturday, Arab culture out on display for the WA general community to come out and have just to be a part of it, experienced the Arab culture, the food, the rides, there'll be a harem tent with belly dancers. It'll be just a fun-filled day for everyone to come and enjoy.
And now here's AMA WA spokesman Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly medical and news commentary.
Hi, no surprise that we're seeing a reduction in reported cases of COVID, although we still have 95 in hospital in Western Australia due to the disease, and about 1,300 around the country. To keep that in perspective, big hospital like Fiona Stanley is about 800 beds, so significant burden. We're not seeing the peaks that we were seeing earlier on, but what we are seeing is that the waves are just not going back to zero. So still a reminder to avoid illness when you can. That seems like a fairly obvious thing, but if you have one of those decent masks, KN95 or N95, I'd be wearing that still in public places, and certainly I'd feel uncomfortable going into crowded public transport and so on without a mask. On the back of the information that's coming out in the long COVID inquiry, which is underway in the House of Representatives, the Parliament in Canberra at the moment, and the testimony from people like Brendan Crabb, respected director of the Burnett Institute, that there is unfortunately a significant proportion of people, up to 3 or 4% of people who are vaccinated, who after a round of COVID will struggle to return to good health. Now, this is limiting people's ability to get back to work. Very frustrating for them, very frustrating for their families, and best avoided in the first place because we don't have a lot of good treatments for the kind of cardiac complications we're seeing, the breathing complications we're seeing, which all seem to be related to tiny little blood clots in tiny vessels throughout the body. A complication which is unique amongst the viruses to COVID still at this stage. So get out there and get that latest booster, the bivalent booster, available from this week, and that one will give you the best protection available. And also we would expect to be seeing cases rising on the back of kids getting back to school this week, and we all know what a drag it is if the kids come down with something and can't be getting along to school, how much that interferes with the family. So bit of basic prevention. Keep the windows open, wear a mask in crowded indoor public spaces, get your booster and stay safe. Thanks for your time.
That was Dr. Andrew Miller's comment. Speaking about the Arab Festival, we've covered a little bit earlier in this program. Camel rides are definitely a major feature of the show. Now, Melly, believe it or not, I've never rode a camel before. What about you?
I have, and I definitely recommend it. It's great fun, and the Arab Festival is certainly something both of us are looking forward to, and we'll have more coverage of that event in next week's program. We'll recap this week's top stories again in just a moment.
But right now, here's Madeline Lombardi with Western Perspective.
Hello, Ivan and Melly. Welcome to Western Perspective. I'm Madeline Lombardi. A mission led by Police and Defence Minister Paul Papalia seeks to target UK and Irish workers to move to Western Australia under the campaign It's Like No Other. The mission seeks to sell WA's higher wages, lower cost of living, surf and sunshine lifestyle to workers overseas.
We've received more than 800 applications from qualified, experienced police officers in the UK and Ireland seeking to take up the offer. It's a big push. Western Australia is the best place in the world to live. We all know that, but it's also a land of opportunity. And by comparison to what's going on now, what's confronting people in the UK and Ireland, it looks like nirvana, and it really is. It's not a hard sell to sell Western Australia to the world.
Multicultural advocate Suresh Rajan joins us on the program. Thanks for joining us, Suresh. So Police and Defence Minister Paul Papalia is leading a mission that seeks to gain English and Irish workers from a range of industries. Do you think that the state government should have branched out to other Commonwealth countries outside of the UK and Ireland?
Undoubtedly, we've been talking for a long time about the fact that their focus has been very much on England, UK, Ireland, and also in South Africa. So they've been looking at only those three places largely over the last few years. And going back some time ago, they went to only those three places. And what we ended up with is, look, people who probably would not have passed the test of coming in if there was an open environment. Whereas what we're facing here is a an environment where we're so desperate for people that we've lowered our standards to pick people up who won't necessarily fit into our community. For example, when we go back to the last lot of the recruitment that they did in England, one of those recruits ended up leaving the police and then joining One Nation Party and becoming a member of parliament. And he has openly been very, very racist in his views. And it's not something that we would have necessarily picked up when we did an interview with him back when he was trying to come in as a policeman. Another policeman was first found guilty and subsequently acquitted of having released information that he obtained from the police database to the white supremacist neo-Nazi groups, and that was unacceptable. So he was convicted on that ground as well. Subsequently, there was an acquittal, but it was on some technical grounds that the acquittal occurred. So I'm concerned that whilst we're bringing people in from these places, we're not assessing potentially how they're going to be integrating into a very, very culturally diverse community. Going back some years, now it's almost about 13 years ago, I was involved in a team that actually redesigned the uniforms of WA Police, one to accommodate the hijab being worn, so people who could wear the hijab could still wear the police uniform, and we made the cut of the shirt at the waist level slightly shorter so that the flesh wasn't exposed, which was an important consideration for some people from an Islamic background. We also then redesigned the uniform so that people were able to have their turbans on and have the police insignia on the front of the turban. So it was very much designed to accommodate our multicultural community. So we can take people from those backgrounds because the policing systems in most Commonwealth nations are exactly the same. So, we've got somewhere like India, which has a very significant population that we could tap into. We have a population in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, for example. These are all places from which we could take people, but we seem to be just focused entirely on England and the wider UK and South Africa, which is unfortunate. We really should be branching out and looking at some of the multicultural communities.
So the government has specifically targeted this mission towards police officers in the UK and Ireland. Are there any worries about excluding other nations under the Commonwealth from actively taking part in this mission?
The reality is that we are an extremely multicultural community. We have huge amounts of cultural diversity in our community. Why are we going back to this focus very much on white Anglo-Celtic people when really what we're dealing with here is a community that's almost 53 or 54% either a migrant or a child of a migrant. So we're talking about people who are incredibly diverse in their outlook, incredibly diverse in their cultural practices, and we need to cater for those. One of the things that we've seen as a result of the work we did around the accommodation of different types of cultural and religious beliefs into the uniforms, for example, is that all of a sudden we were starting to pick up a number of people at recruitment drives from those particular cultural communities in WA. There were people coming to the police recruitment drives who were from the Islamic community, who were from the white African community, who were from the Indian community, the Sikh community, etc. So all of a sudden, when people can identify with somebody who is from their community being in the police, they will also want to go and engage with the police in a recruitment capacity. So that's the upside, and that's being ignored. For too long, our police has been seen as a very white Anglo-Celtic Catholic male dominant group. We need to change that. Until we change that, we are not going to see that diversity in the police that is reflective of the community.
And finally, Suresh, do you believe that this mission accurately considers new workers in multicultural Australia?
Not at all. It's just ignoring the fact that we are an incredibly diverse community. We're going back to looking at a very white Anglo-Celtic paradigm on which this whole thing's being based. That is not the way to do it. It is quite appropriate for them to start looking wider afield into places like India, into places like Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, etc. All offer some very good opportunities and very good people that they could recruit, and people who could come and engage with the communities, the multicultural communities here at a much better level than will a white Anglo-Celtic person coming from England or UK generally.
Thanks so much for your time, Suresh. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Maddie.
That was multicultural advocate Suresh Rajan speaking with us on Western Perspective. You can view that and other premium stories by subscribing to the WAMN Extra News Club, supporting independent local journalism and keeping democracy strong. You can join us by clicking on the link in the description below. And now here's Leo Puglisi with what's coming up on 6 News Tonight.
Thanks, guys. On 6 News, controversy grows over Brisbane's 2032 Olympics redevelopment. Former students speaking out, the future of a local school up in the air. Dominic Perrottet denies his party is in chaos after a Liberal MP was suspended. And the US says justice must be served after formally declaring Russia has committed crimes against humanity in Ukraine. Watch live on our YouTube channel and our website, 6newsau.com. For now, guys, it is back to you.
Thanks, Leo. And before we head out tonight, here is a brief weather update. Perth is set to swelter with temperatures hitting around 35 degrees on Monday, then gradually cooling down during the week with 31 on Tuesday, 29 on Wednesday, cloudy with 25 degrees on Thursday and 27 on Friday with an overnight temperature hovering around 12 degrees. And that's all from Western Perspective this week. We'll be back with you next Sunday. Until then, Ivan and Melly, it's back to you.
Thanks, Maddie. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
Don't forget to subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club so we can continue our work in the community. Full details on wamnnews.com.au/news/extra. From Melly and myself, we wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.